I'm approaching what was once the northern entrance to the Roman city of Lincoln. Back then, it was known as Lindum Colonia. It kind of sounds a bit like a bank or a building society. In this video, I'm going to be exploring Roman Lincoln and visit those places that you can see today. Well, here's one of them already. The Newport Arch is the only remaining archway, gateway left in Britain from Roman times. And as you can see, traffic still passes through it. Unfortunately, in 1964, a truck ran into it. The arch was built in about the 3rd century AD. Merry Christmas. No worries. This is your pedestrian access through here. And the road traffic just over that way there. But over the centuries, the ground level has risen a bit, and it would have been much, much higher. Would have been a much higher arch then. And just next to the Newport Arch, down that way there, you can see one of the foundations for the towers that used to be here. East Bight. I'm going to walk along this little street here for a bit and come up to the next Roman ruin on this tour. There it is. This was a water reservoir for the city. The sign here, though, says something about they're not exactly sure how it worked or even if it went into use. I mean, there was a lot of water being stored here. One conclusion could be that the system was built, but then never worked. Oh, it'd be a bummer. You went to all that trouble to build it and then it doesn't work. And in the ground there, maybe just down there, you can see these lines going around. That's actually where the reservoir was. I think it was about 12,000 litres. And this road running right through the middle of Lincoln up here, heading through the Newport Arch, this was originally a Roman road. We know it as Ermine Street. This is the road that led directly from London via Lincoln up to York. This area here at the intersection of Westgate and Westgate was the site of the Roman Forum, and right behind me there, that was a Roman well. That was dug by the 9th Legion in the 1st century AD when they were setting up the fort here. Later on, probably from the 5th century, the Forum became the site of at least one church, and that was the St. Paul in the Vale. The headquarters of the Roman legionary fortress stood on this site previously, and then the area was redeveloped as the Forum. Where I'm walking now, you can see this pattern in the ground. This is where the church was, St. Paul in the Vale. Certainly one of the very earliest Christian churches in Britain. One of the strange things about England is that tombstones can become decoration in public areas. The Rome... There's a very interesting information board. Unfortunately, it's right behind this very lovely lit up display, almost saying the word Lincoln. Yeah, it's just saying that the early church here was timber. There's been excavations. I wish I can move these things. And the castle, Lincoln Castle, is just behind me up that way there. This has been a fortified site in one form or another for 2,000 years. I'm on West Bight. This is literally just the next block over from that Forum site. This wall here, this remains here, this is known as the Mint Wall. It's nothing to do with coinage. This was part of the Basilica in the Roman Forum. It's a remarkable survivor from Roman times. The Basilica was kind of like the town hall of the day. This is the place where a lot of, laws were discussed and decisions made and meetings and that kind of place. The sort of place where you pay your bills. I don't know if people paid bills back then, but anyway. But a very, very high wall. Normally with Roman remains, you get something in the ground, a few pavers or a few stones. But this is, I'm 6 foot, so that's probably 12, 13 feet high. can see here in the road, they've got these markers, these kind of brick circular things. What these do is they plot out the line of a colonnade, big columns here. This is where archaeology has found them buried here, and so they've put these little designs in the road to show you where the columns were of the forum. There we go. They go in a line that way. The later road follows it. I'm going to get off the road because there's a car coming. Now I'm approaching the Lincoln Hotel because there's some Roman ruins in the car park out the front. So what we've got here is the East Gate. The cathedral's at it again. The artist's impression depicts what this gateway would have looked like in about 300 AD. This isn't the very first gate on the site. There was an earlier timber one, and they've marked it down there, showing where those timbers were originally. Of course, they were taken out, the whole thing remodeled when it was built in stone later on. Now, the site was excavated in the early 1960s, and by the looks of the Lincoln Hotel, it looks like that was built in the early 1960s. Right, so the East Gate is just behind me over there, heading to the next place, which is going to be Lincoln Castle. That is closed at the moment, but I've got some stuff to say there. See these here? These are flying buttresses. I'm outside Lincoln Cathedral, and they were doing some renovation work here some years ago. They're doing a survey of what condition the cathedral was in, and apparently at least one of these flying buttresses wasn't even attached to the cathedral anymore. Many years ago, during work here at the cathedral, Roman mosaics were excavated. They were later moved to a safer place and apparently put under the stairs in the cathedral library. There we go again. We've got the bells from the cathedral, and there's bells from this church as well. Make it stop. Lee Pemberton House, 16th century. So Roman Lincoln was established in about the year AD 60 by the 9th Legion, and strategically placed because it was near the intersection of Ermine Street and the Fosse Way, and also the River Witham down in the valley. Behind me is Lincoln Castle, but this whole area here was all part of the legionary fortress. And this wasn't just any Roman fortress, this was one of the big ones here in Britain. Oh, thank heavens for that. But it didn't last too long as a military base. In about the year AD 71, the 9th Legion was moved further north, up to York, and the Roman name for York was Eboracum. So it became a question of, well, what do you do with this place? If it's not going to be a legionary fortress anymore, what do you do with it? It was an expensive place to build and maintain. The fort became a colony for veterans, those soldiers who had served their time in the army and were now retired. So now that the veterans were settling here, they needed more space. When this was just a fort, you had a pathway leading up from the River Witham up the steep hill to the south gate of the fort. But that area now, on that steep slope going down, that became more or less the commercial area of the new colony of veterans. The area up here was turned from a fort into residential housing. Some nice houses up here, and of course very, very good views of the surrounding area. Imagine a Roman town as a blanket, and someone took that blanket and draped it over the side of a hill. That essentially is what Roman Lincoln is like. It's the most unusual layout of a Roman town I've ever seen. Is there a car behind me? Yes. Couldn't hear it over the bells. Starting my descent down steep hill. This little shop across the road there, that's Lincoln's original pie shop. They got a plaque up there, T.E. Lawrence lodged here during World War I. That's the second time I've come across Lawrence. The first time was when I sat in his chair in a pub in Wareham.
Good morning. Happy Christmas.
G'day, how are you? So this area where I am now, that's, what is it? Wordsworth Street. Right about here was the site of the South Gate. This was the old gate that led up into the fort, coming up this way here. So you'd be walking up the hill here and you'd come to this huge gate, and round about now I would be passing into the Legionary Fortress. The gate there, the whole gate system there, was pulled down in the 1700s. But stones from it survived, and I understand that some of the buildings on the left here, on the west side of this street, actually incorporate old Roman stonework from that south gate. Some of these here, especially that one there. See that big one just there? That could very well be part of the old south gate building. 40, this is number 44. In this building are the remains of the eastern carriageway of the southern gate of the upper Roman city. In this building. Isn't that cool? In there. Just a little interesting thing I'm passing as I head back down Steep Hill. Norman House. This dates to about 1170 to 1180. Good heavens. So what I'm doing now is following Ermine Street, or at least roughly where Ermine Street was. Probably went right through that medieval building there. The road has since, during the medieval period, it's split. So you had a road going that way and a road going that way. Roman roads tend to be very straight, of course, but over the last 1500 years or so, it's other little laneways have been put in. But anyway, we're heading downhill. Steep Hill really lives up to its name. The gradient here is 16.12 degrees. That makes this the fourth steepest street in the United Kingdom. So we've left behind the old fort up there and mainly the residential area later on when it became a veterans colony. Walking down the hill, this was your commercial area. This would have been shops and manufacturers and blacksmiths, shoemakers, shops to buy your food and your wine and your grain, and apothecaries and local priests and all the sort of stuff to make a town work. Arrived down here at Lincoln City Hall, and there are some remains here of the Westgate. This area was excavated when this building was going up, and they've incorporated, you can see the building here, it runs underneath, just under there, under the modern building. Although I don't really think this would be classed as a modern building now. A good substantial part of the wall still exists here. So what that would mean is I'm currently standing just on the outside of Roman Lincoln. There's the wall there. You walk through it just over this little bridge. And then I would be walking back into the city. That there is Brayford Pool. Just down there was the site of an Iron Age village belonging to people known by the tribe as the Corial Tuvi. when the Romans arrived here in about 60 AD, this area was used. This was a productive landscape used by the native Britons for farming and hunting and fishing, but the Romans didn't want to be down here. They wanted to be up there on that hill. You can see in the distance there the spires of Lincoln Cathedral. That whole area up there was where the Roman fort was built. So what became of the indigenous Britons who had called this area their home for thousands of years? Well, quite likely they carried on living here. But of course now they had to deal with their powerful new neighbours, the Romans. Brayford Pool became a massive inland port. In fact, it is the oldest inland port in the United Kingdom. You can imagine this area here full of Roman cargo ships coming up the river with them to offload their goods or load on new goods and then head back down the river towards the Wash and the North Sea and out to maybe northern Germany, the Low Countries, Gaul, or places further afield. Yeah, right, go on through.
That church is the oldest one in Lincoln after the cathedral.
Yeah, it's terrific, isn't it?
Go round, have you been round the cathedral?
I have, yeah.
My mum and dad are buried.
Oh, right, okay.
We ran the cathedral.
Oh, lovely, thank you.
Where are you from?
Australia.
Australia?
Yeah.
Come to Lincoln just for the day.
So what ultimately became of Roman Lincoln? After Roman administration was withdrawn from Britain around about 409, 410 AD, the town suffered a considerable decline in trade and population, but it wasn't completely abandoned, and we know that there were at least a couple of churches built up on the hill. As Roman administration dwindled in this country, a new people emerged on the horizon, the Anglo-Saxons, and they were here to stay. And there's a very interesting example of Anglo-Saxon presence here in Lincoln. And as part of the fabric of this church here, this is St Mary le Wigford. This is down near Brayford Pool, which is just over that way there. Built into the wall, just up there, you can see that triangular piece of stonework. That is actually an old Roman gravestone, and it's inscribed in Old English. There's a little explanation just down here as to what it says, and the translation from Old English is "Ertig had me built and endowed to the glory of Christ and Saint Mary." What that means is when this church tower was being built in the 10th century, someone found that old gravestone, that old Roman gravestone, which can't have been too far away, because there's no point dragging stone from miles and miles and miles away. There would have been so much Roman ruin and Roman rubble here that you would make use of it. And someone did that. They set it into the wall, but they wrote on it in Old English. Of course, the church has been added to and developed over many, many centuries. But it's a very fitting place to end this video, because we started up on the hill with the Roman fort, and we end back down here near Brayford Pool with the next stage in British history, with the arrival of the Anglo-Saxons from northern Germany and Denmark, and they carved their existence into the very fabric of this church using old Roman remains. Pretty amazing. Okay, there we are. There's a tour of Roman Lincoln. Thanks very much for watching the video. Fascinating place to come to and explore, and the great thing about it is there is still so much to see on the ground. And it's all free. You can just wander around and see it at your own pace. Terrific. What a wonderful way to spend Christmas Day. Although it would be nice to be with family. So thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please consider hitting that like and the subscribe button. And I'll see you again soon.